Welcome back to the It's Not Supposed to Be Pretty podcast. My name is Kyle Stapleton, and I am your host. And welcome to episode 7. Before we get started, I want to acknowledge that there's been quite a gap between episode 6 and today. The reason for that is 2 weeks ago, when I wanted to record and release episode 7, I went up to Lake George to go hiking with a good friend. This was a trip we had planned out a few months before. If you've been following and listening along, you know that hiking is part of the structure of my life. It's part of my identity. It resets me mentally and emotionally, and it puts me in touch with my higher power. And Lake George has been on my list. I wanted to go up there last year, but I never got the chance. So when the opportunity fell into my lap to pull the trigger on it, it wasn't something I could wait on. I've got a lot of great pictures, and I'll put them up on the Spotify. Not on the Spotify. I'll put them up on the Instagram and the TikTok, and I'll put them up on the Facebook page as well. Really quickly, I've been looking at the numbers. You guys have been responding. And again, I had a feeling that you would. That's why I chose to take the show in this direction. 11.4K views on YouTube, 26 subscribers on the channel, 147 plays on Spotify, 19 followers. I can't do this without you. And so the response has been very encouraging because it's because of you. It's because of you, my viewers and my listeners, that I keep coming back to record. It's because of you that I chose to take the show in this direction. It's because of you that I continue to come up with material. So thank you. Without you, seriously, without you, I'm just a guy with a clip-on microphone sitting in his car, you know. So it really is because of you that this show has gotten any momentum at all. If you remember last episode, we laid out some foundational principles that are essential to any change in life. And again, just to summarize, this show isn't just about sobriety and recovery. This show is for anyone who wishes to grow and change. You know, it's the realization that once I make the decision to change and once I make the decision to grow, it's a lifelong process. There's no graduation. I don't get a diploma. I don't get to put my feet up one day and stop and say, oh, I'm grown now. I've changed. I've healed completely. That's not how it works, at least not in my experience. There's always new challenges that come up. You know, there's always new scenarios. There's always new interactions that come up that test the structure, you know, that we try to build when we embark on this journey. But before we get to that structure, right, before we can even think to, you know, apply the principles that I'm just barely touching on, we have to go through some events, right? And that first event that we covered last episode is we have to get to a point to where we admit that our life is unmanageable for whatever reason. And we have to admit that we're powerless over something in our life, right? Step 1 in any 12-step program, right? We admitted we were powerless, dash that our lives have become unmanageable. And then, this is my notebook. So this is episode 7. I wrote a couple pages to have some direction for the show. I'm not, it doesn't all sit up here, I promise you. I'm not trying to be, cavalier or anything. I'm just a guy that had an idea to start a podcast, and well, this is how I do it. So we admit that we're powerless over something and that our lives have become unmanageable. To get to this point, we have to go through pain. We have to go through a lot of pain. Some of us a lot more than others. I hope that, you know, if you're out there and you're in pain, Maybe, hopefully, it's the alarm bell. Finally, just ding, 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 ding. I imagine there being like a bell here, but I've realized I'm just kind of shaking my hand. But imagine there's a bell, right? And I'm holding a bell and it's ding, 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 or like flashing red lights, like, woo, like, woo. If you're in pain, I hope it's that. Like, I hope it's the alarm bell. I hope it's the flashing red lights because I know the amount of pain it took for me to get to where I had to change my life. I know the amount of pain I had to go through and how I had to destroy my life before I was finally ready to say my way doesn't work anymore. And it hurt, And so if you're in pain right now, I hope that you've reached your limit. But unfortunately, that's not always the case. Some people got to go through a lot, and some people never get it. Some people just don't, for one reason or another. But we get through enough pain, we admit that our life is unmanageable, and we want to change, right? We want to change. We realize this phrase, my way doesn't work anymore. My way doesn't work anymore. I will do anything. Maybe that way, maybe that way over there, maybe what those people are doing works. It seems to work for them. Maybe it'll work for me. That was my experience with AA. Was I finally, again, got brought to my knees, and I admitted I'm an alcoholic. I can't control the amount I take, and when I try to stop altogether, I cannot. Therefore, I'm an alcoholic. This is what I've come to believe. And when I came to the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous, I saw rooms full of people, and they were smiling. They were making jokes with each other. They had real deep relationships with each other. It wasn't just they went to meetings together. They went on trips together. They went to get food together. They went on commitments. Like, when I say commitment, you take a meeting to a rehab or a treatment facility. They knew each other's families. They were in each other's weddings. I mean, they had real relationships with each other. And they were content with what they had. They were okay with how their life was going for the most part. And that's not to say that life wasn't a struggle for them. That's not to say that they don't still have to handle the highs and lows of life. What I'm saying is they walk through these things as men and women of honor and dignity, and they handle it without picking up a drink. They handle it without getting drunk, and they get to the other side of it. And that was very attractive to me. So I said, well, my way's not working. Their way is working. So why don't I try their way, right? And that brings us to this episode, right? Episode 7, we made a decision. Episode 6 was the jumping off point. Episode 7, we made a decision. However, before we get into the real meat and potatoes of these next couple of episodes, we have to understand that making a decision is not enough. In the last episode, I mentioned motivation. So motivation is temporary, right? You come in to whatever, and you realize okay, I'm in a lot of pain. My life is not going the way I thought it was going to go. My relationships are all crumbling around me. I'm so unhappy. I want to change. I'm going to change. I'm going to do what I need to do. And then you get fired up about it, right? But if you don't make a decision, you're not really going to do anything. If you don't move your feet and take action, you're not really going to do anything. Eventually that motivation will fade. And if nothing, I just recalled a quote that I heard from somebody in the rooms. Nothing changes if nothing changes. And so you will find yourself back in those same situations. You will find yourself back in those same cycles. You will continue to go through the pain. You have to take action. We have to move our feet. So making the decision, in order to do this, we need something called willingness. So picture a door. It's closed, and you're standing on, you're looking at this closed door. Behind you is the chaos that you've been living with for quite some time. And you claim that you're done. You claim that you're exhausted. You claim that you're sick and tired of being sick and tired, however that might look for you. And you see this door. And the only way to unlock the door is to have something called willingness. I'm willing to believe that my way of doing things no longer works. I'm willing to believe that my way of navigating life no longer works. And I'm willing to believe and accept that on the other side of this door is the way to a new life, is the way to a better life. That willingness is the key, and it goes into the door and it turns it so that you can put your hand on the doorknob, turn the doorknob, and open the door and walk through it. Which, when we take inventory, that's us walking through that door. We're taking inventory, means we made a decision, we're taking action, we're taking the first steps through that door when we take inventory. So, before we get into all this, I want to broaden and globalize some things here, because again, this show isn't just about Alcoholics Anonymous. It's not just about you've got a problem with drugs and alcohol. You might not have a problem with drugs. You might not. Plain and simple. You might not have a problem with drugs and alcohol. You might be able to drink and control the amount you take. And you might not even have to think about it. You might be able to stop whenever you want to. I've never met somebody that shot heroin that could do that. I've never met somebody that snorted coke that could do that. Maybe they're out there. I don't know. But, with like alcohol and with other substances like marijuana, maybe you're one of those people. Maybe you can have catch a nice buzz and say, I'm done. I gotta get up and go to work tomorrow, or I have stuff to do around the house. So you might not have a problem with drugs and alcohol, right? There's part of the population that does. There's part of the population that can't control it, right? That's why I go to AA meetings. I go to AA meetings for my drinking, because I stepped, the thing about the book, our big book, that I love is the first 4 chapters really go in depth about explaining the picture of alcoholism. And then when we get to the 4th chapter, which is titled We Agnostics, before it gets into the meat and potatoes of that chapter, it says one more time, it says, if you cannot control the amount you take, meaning that once I started drinking, I could never control how much I was going to drink. That's the first. Number 2, when you try to stop altogether, you find that you cannot. I could take a break for 3 days. I would claim I would go for a week, and I would get to day number 3. No, I'm sorry. I could, for 2 whole days, for 2 whole days, I could take a break. And then I would get to the 3rd day, and I would go all day the 3rd day, but then the night of the 3rd day would get there, and I'd be like, well, it's been almost 3 days since I've had a drink. I'm fine. I'm not an alcoholic. What is that saying? What did I just describe to you? I described to you the real life example of somebody who could not stop altogether, right? So there is people in this population that are like that, right? But you might not have a problem with drugs and alcohol. So there's a bunch of different tools that we can turn to when we make this decision that we want to change our lives. The first is a 12-step program. And there's a definition I wrote down here, right? And I've heard people refer to 12-step programs as cults. So this is the actual definition of a cult. So a cult is a social group characterized by extreme religious, spiritual, or philosophical beliefs. You think of Jonestown, you think of the Waco, out in Waco, Texas. I forget the guy's name. Those I would consider cults. 12-step programs, there's several of them. The most widely known is AA. There's AA, there's NA, which is Narcotics Anonymous, OA, opioid, CA, cocaine. There's Overeaters Anonymous. There's Sex and Lovers Anonymous. And then there's also a group that I was informed of called Tar-Anon, which is, I believe it's Toxic and Abusive Relationships Anonymous. So these groups, they use, a framework of the 12 steps that was made famous by AA. The language of the steps may vary, but the principles behind these, it's a framework. It provides us a framework. It provides us a blueprint for rebuilding our lives. 12-step programs are, I don't know why I keep looking down at my notebook. Like, you guys are gonna you might be seeing me do this like, I really should just hold the thing up here. All right, so a 12-step program is a peer-led, community-driven framework for rebuilding a life. So I want to talk about the elephant in the room, right? It's this higher power thing. I had to take a sip of water here. So there's a man, his name's Bill Wilson. He was one of the co-founders of Alcoholics Anonymous. He was not religious. So here's a little bit of history for you. So in the section of the big book that is his story, he describes his friend, Ebby Thatcher, who was supposed to be committed for alcoholic insanity. However, this group that was popular at the time, known as the Oxford Group, now the Oxford Group, they were a Christian, faith-based religious group that helped alcoholics achieve sobriety. So they took Ebby under their wing. Ebby got sober. Bill was really not doing well. He was not the picture of health. That's all I will say about that. Ebby calls him on the phone, comes to visit him. Ebby starts talking about how he's sober. And Bill had a real issue with this idea of religion helping people achieve sobriety. And this is not uncommon. This is something that I myself can relate to, right? I think in episode 2, if you listen to episode 2, The Neuroscience of Belief, I describe, yes, I have a faith today. I'm a big fan of Jesus, but I'm not a big fan of going to church. I'm not a big fan of his followers. I'm not a big fan of, oh, well, now that I'm a Christian, I can only date other Christian people. And, if you're not a Christian, I can't be friends with you, and this and that and da-da-da-da-da-da-da. That goes against my whole framework, which AA gave me, because, as a 12-step program, we're not allied with any sect, denomination, politics, organization, or institution. We do not wish to engage in any controversy. And that's true. That's my framework, right? So I'm a big fan of Jesus, but I'm not really a big fan of his followers. I'm not a big fan of the holier-than-thou crowd. I can't go into a church and listen to the music and be inspired. It's just not who I am, because, again, I come from an environment where, I've seen people literally rebuild their lives. I've heard people tell me their stories about what they were like, what happened, and what they're like now. And they are true walking miracles. They're truer evidence of God than I will find in the church. At least that's been my experience so far. So I want to talk about, right, this elephant in the room, this higher power, because Bill Wilson, one of the co-founders of AA, one of the co-founders of the Steps, he could not get behind the idea of a czar of the heavens. That's how he refers to it. He could not think of a czar of the heavens. And then Ebby, his friend, said, why don't you choose your own conception? And that's exactly what Bill did, right? Bill, they use a few phrases. Creative intelligence is one, spirit of the universe is another. And then something that in the rooms that I've heard is we break the word God down into an acronym. GOD, good, orderly direction. And these are ways that, you can think of a higher power. Again, and I've said this before, for me in the very beginning, it was the rooms, it was the program, it was the people. It was this collective community of people that were staying sober, changing their lives one day at a time. People that had made that decision that their way wasn't working anymore. Their life had become unmanageable, and they had finally gone through enough pain where they were willing to do something about it, right? And because of that, it was this collective power in these rooms through these steps in this community. And that was a power greater than me. It always will be. At the simplest level, like I'm not even talking about a creative intelligence at that point. I'm talking about literally like a group of people. It's a power greater than me. It always has been, always will be. So the other thing about these 12-step groups is it is a room full of people with the same broken user manual, offering a mirror without judgment. Am I doing it again? I just did it again, didn't I? I got to call myself out on it. I just looked down on my notebook. So here we go. All right. It's a room full of people. So again, Alcoholics Anonymous, right? I'll just use this example from my own experience. So Alcoholics Anonymous, the men came up to me and they told me about the way that they drank. And I could identify with how they drank. Now, that's not to say that every man that has shared their story with me, I drank exactly like them. I'm not saying that we all did the exact same things. I'm not saying that we all suffered the exact same consequences. What I can say is that I've heard a lot of people say that I identify with is that they just felt off. One way or another, they just felt off. They had a lot of fear. They had a lot of anxiety. They cared a lot about what people thought of them. They were very emotionally sensitive. They had difficulty with relationships. They had difficulty with friendships. They had difficulty at work. They were always in some kind of conflict with another person, right? These things I can identify with, right? This was my experience. And then the drink took that away, right? The drink did for them what they could not do for themselves. It was their solution. It was my solution. And so AA is a room full of people with the same broken hardware that I have. We all share our experiences. Like, this is the way that I thought, this is the way that I behaved, and this is the way that I drank. And the unifying commonality is we all could not control the amount we took when we started, right? All of us collectively, once we started drinking, we couldn't control how much we were going to drink that day. And the other unifier is that we could not stop when we wanted to. So the other 12 step groups, right? Narcotics Anonymous, Overeaters Anonymous, Sex and Lovers Anonymous, opioid, cocaine, like all of them. That's the symptom right there, right? Like, there's probably an anonymous group for people that shop too much too, but that is the presenting symptom. It's the drinking, the drugs, the sex, the overeating. That is the symptom that people see. However, underneath of that is the real issue, right? So in Alcoholics Anonymous, right, drinking was a symptom of a much deeper underlying issues within myself. And these rooms, here we go. Room full of people, the same broken user manual, offering a mirror without judgment. By the way, it's free. You don't have to pay for it. So that's a resource that you can use if you've made a decision that you want to change your life. You can check out a 12-step group, and it can be an in-person group. Al-Anon's another one. How did I forget about Al-Anon? And then there's Alateen as well. So they have in-person meetings. All of these groups, they've got in-person meetings and they've got online meetings. So look it up. Give it a shot. You know what I mean? It was presented like the way it was presented to me is, what do you have to lose? My way really wasn't working for me anymore. What have I got to lose by just trying? Go to one, like I challenge each and every single one of my watchers and listeners. If you were at that jumping off point and you're there, man, like you're sitting in it right now and you're going, I can't do this anymore. My way doesn't work and I'm in so much pain, right? What do you have to lose? Whatever the issue is, again, it might not be drugs and alcohol. It might be something else, but whatever's going on in your life, check out a meeting, go to one meeting. You don't even have to raise your hand. Sit in the back, and listen, or go on Zoom or the websites of these places, find out how to get into an online meeting and just log into the online meeting, turn your microphone off, turn your screen off, put your phone upside down if you want to, and just listen and see if you can identify with how other people talk about their experience. That's the other useful tool, is we identify, we don't compare. You know what I mean? Because no two stories really are the same. We all suffer different types of consequences. We all did different types of things in our chaos. Don't listen to that. Listen to the things that you can identify with, right? What did this person go through when they were growing up? How did they feel? What were their thoughts like? How did they behave, and like that's that stuff that you might be able to identify to. But that's my suggestion, is identify, don't compare. Listen to identify, don't listen to compare. Don't raise your hand if you don't want to. Sit in the back or log on to an online meeting, turn your screen off, turn your microphone off, but just listen, give it a shot. So now the next phase of making a decision, if 12-step groups aren't your thing, there's therapy. And there's different types of therapy. So this time I have to use like my notes here, because I have to be like professional and factual, and I want to be, because this is serious shit. So the first type that I found that I've heard mentioned a lot is cognitive behavioral therapy. And this focuses on the triad of our thoughts, feelings, and behaviors. This teaches you to catch, challenge, and change automatic negative thoughts. Think of this as a daily management system for your brain. It stops you from believing every lie your mind tells you when you are stressed. So that's cognitive behavioral therapy. It's a very brief and crude summary of it. My therapist actually gave me a whole grid called thought reframing. And in this grid, I identify the thought, First I identify the location, right? Am I at home? Am I at work? Am I driving? Then I identify the thought. And then I identify the automatic feeling that of this thought. How does this thought make me feel? Then it's, what evidence do I have that supports this thought? What evidence can I come up with that makes this thought true? Then I go, well, what evidence do I have that doesn't support this thought? What evidence do I have that doesn't make this thought true? And then I compare the two, and it's oh, wait, that's actually not a true thought. I don't really have any evidence for that. This is actually the real evidence over here. And then I go, well, now how am I feeling? And that's been really helpful for me. So the next one is called DBT, dialectical behavior therapy. Try saying dialectical. Dialectical. Try saying that 5 times fast or 10 times fast. I don't know how many times I just said it. I'm just being silly at this point. So dialectical behavioral therapy is designed for intense emotional dysregulation. It focuses on 4 pillars: mindfulness, distress, emotional regulation, and interpersonal effectiveness. I'm sorry. Mindfulness, distress, tolerance. I can't read my own handwriting. I've got chicken scratch. Everybody's commented on it. Not my entire life, but as a nurse, I've written like reports on patients. I've handed it to my colleagues. They're like, I can't read your handwriting. And I've always said, yeah, well, I went to school to be a nurse, not an English major. So there you go. But I can't read my own handwriting. So the 4 pillars, mindfulness, distress tolerance, emotional regulation, and interpersonal effectiveness. Interpersonal effectiveness. So think of DBT as your emergency brake. It gives you concrete skills to sit in discomfort without reacting. And then the last one that I found, this is a trauma-focused type of therapy. It's called EDMR, eye movement, desensitization, and reprocessing. This is a trauma-focused therapy that uses bilateral stimulation, such as side-to-side eye movement, to help the brain reprocess traumatic memories stored in the nervous system. Very simplistically, this takes the charge out of old emotional trauma. So the core, right? Here's the core message, but behind the 12-step programs and therapy, right? So I got to take another sip of water here. I'm surprised I haven't had to go pee yet. It's amazing. I have the bladder of a hummingbird. You didn't need to know that, but you do anyway. All right. So 12-step programs give you community and they give you a spiritual framework for how to rebuild and live your life. Therapy repairs the psychological wiring. And here's the cool part. You don't have to pick one or the other. They work really well together. So I'm a member of AA and I go to therapy and they work really well together. And they can work really well for anything. Again, and I just have to stress this. This is not just about if you've got a problem with drugs and alcohol. So if, whatever type of community you choose, again, and it might not even be a 12-step program. I mean, there's smart recovery, there's Dharma recovery, right? There's Buddhist meditation. There's a place a couple towns over from where I live. There's a Quaker meeting house, and on Monday nights you can go there for a Buddhist meditation, right? I've been there. It's actually really good. It's a really cool experience. That's also something I suggest. Excuse me. So the 12-step programs, they give you a community and a spiritual framework for rebuilding your life. Therapy repairs the psychological wiring, and it works, and they do work best. They work best together. It's one is the loneliest number that you ever know. So don't be lonely. Don't use one. Don't pick one. Use both. So now, drum roll, please. All right. So inventory. Let's talk about it. So what is an inventory? More importantly, what is a moral inventory? So here is the definition that I found. So a moral inventory is a comprehensive, honest self-evaluation of one's thoughts, attitudes, and past behaviors, designed to help individuals identify personal shortcomings, harmful patterns, and character defects without resorting to shame or self-judgment. So this goes back to, the title of the episode, We Made a Decision. So now I'm going to talk about some of the steps here, right? In a traditional 12-step sense. So step one, right? I admit my life is powerless over something. I admit that I'm powerless over something. My life has become unmanageable. Number 2, I'm willing to believe that a power greater than myself will restore me to sanity, right? Step 3, this is the decision. This is where we make the decision. As I said, when I did step 3 in AA with my sponsor said, step 3 for you is a decision to keep doing AA. Step 3 for you is a decision to keep going through with the rest of the steps, right? But step 3 says we turn our will and our life over to the care of our higher power as we understand him. You know what I mean? Or her, or it. But step 3 is we're making that decision, right? Step 4, this is that moral inventory, right? Now we're walking through that door. Our willingness to make the decision open that door, but now we're going to actually start walking through it when we take this inventory. And the first key to the inventory, the first, I don't know. I thought I was going to say something like clever, um, but I'm not, and I'm also not going to edit this out because this is just really human. And I think you guys really appreciate, the humanistic side of it. But the first part of the inventory is talking about resentment. And I used to think resentment was just being angry, but there's more to it than that. So a resentment is refeeling old pain over and over. So what does this look like? Um, I'm gonna all right, so let's get serious now. So refeeling old pain over and over and over. So basically for me that looked like maybe something that happened when I was 13, but I kept thinking about it when I was 30. You know what I mean? So it's like event may have happened when I was 13 or 14, right? But I'm 30 years old now. I'm going to be 35 in a couple months. So this is going back a couple years, but like I'm 28 or 29 or 30 or whatever. And I'm still thinking about the crap that happened when I was 13 or 14 over and over and over and over again. And it could have been anything, right? It could have been like, just like a real quick, like I had difficulty making friends when I was growing up. It just is what it is. It's nobody's fault. I got picked on. I was weird. I mean, I would have picked on me too. I was a weird kid. I made all kinds of noises. I twitched my head. I picked my nose. Like I was such an easy target. But I got picked on a lot and I had difficulty making friends. So like, I could think about like, whatever, getting pushed into a locker or something when I was 13, or getting, teased or whatever. And like, but I'm 30 now. Do you understand? So like I'm 13 and now I'm 30 and I'm still thinking about that crap. And it's still driving me bonkers. It's still driving me insane. Like it still gets me revved up. So that's like that's a resentment. That's not like a resentment. That is a resentment. You know what I mean? Or like if you think about like the first relationship that you had, and you think about like how that breakup went. It was your first love. It was true love. It was this, it was that, again, like, I mean, when was my first relationship? 14. You know what I mean? Like if I'm still thinking about a relationship I had at 14 and I'm 30, come on. I mean, just speaking it out loud sounds insane. And when I say thinking about it, right, I'm not saying like, oh, like I think about it sometimes. No, like you think about it and there's still emotion attached to it. You're still feeling the pain. That's what makes it the resentment. It's not just that like, because I mean, I'm a human being, right? So every once in a while, and I live where I grew up. So that's even better. So like every once in a while I'll be driving, around, and I'll like drive past like a place where I used to hang out with my friends or something, or I'll drive past something that got knocked down or rebuilt. I'll be like, oh yeah, like we used to hang out there all the time. Or, oh my God, I remember when that used to be that. Not a resentment, right? There's no, it's not what I'm saying. Like when you think about things that happened in the past. No, I'm saying like if you got a bully in school or if the teachers hated you for whatever reason, or if you got into a lot of trouble, or if you think about that first breakup, or you think about your first boss or something like that, and well, if you were working, you were probably 16, but if it was your first relationship, you may have been 13 or 14. If you got bullied, you may have been younger, 10 or 11 or whatever. But now you're fucking 30. And you're still thinking about that stuff and it's still causing you so much pain and you're so angry and it's affecting your life. It negatively affects your life. It negatively affects the people around you. That's what a resentment is. And so I really got to get better with these transitions. We're getting there. I'm learning with you guys. We're all doing this together. So those old feelings that come up, that resentment. So on a biological level, your brain cannot tell the difference between a vivid memory and a current event. Every time you play the mental tape of a resentment, you are actively pumping stress hormones through your body and re-traumatizing your biology. Additionally, there's a saying that I've heard from the rooms. Having a resentment is like drinking poison. You're hoping that the other person gets sick, but you're the one drinking the poison. And maybe that was not a great way to, maybe I butchered it, but essentially it's like, if you're resentful, it's somebody from stuff they did years ago. Like I remember, like this one person was telling me, like they were saying that like they remember getting teased by, the kids in their neighborhood when they were little, and they were 30 and they could still recall that perfectly, and I hate to say it, but I'm pretty sure the kids that did that, they're probably not sitting around thinking about how they used to do that to that person. But that person still remembers it vividly, and there's still pain there, and there's still anger there. And that's a resentment, right? And again, this negatively affects us. It negatively affects our impact on the world around us. It negatively affects our relationships with other people. Resentments block us off. And in the big book, it specifically says resentments block us off from the sunlight of the spirit. Again, it's a 12-step program. It's a spiritual program in nature. If you don't like the sunlight of the spirit, you can put in whatever phrase you like, but resentments block us off. It blocks us off from living life. My life, I felt like my life has been stuck because I've been stuck in resentments. I felt like I had literally just not been, like, I felt like I was just like like I was stuck. I don't know how else to say it. It was like, I was in the world, like I got up, I went to work, I was going to meetings, I was being a dad, I was being all that stuff. But I felt like other people were getting to live life, and I felt like I was just sitting on the sidelines, like not, for whatever reason, unable to participate in the living of life. And I felt stuck, and it's because I was holding on to resentments. And this goes back to the poison metaphor, right? Like I was the one drinking the poison. I wanted you to get sick. I pointed over there. Should have pointed at the camera. I wanted you to get sick, but I was the one drinking the poison. I was keeping myself sick. And that's what a resentment is. And so the ego, our ego. So why do we hold on to resentments? And this is actually a trap, right? We hold on to resentments because we get to play the victim. And if we get to play the victim, if we get to be the victim, and if we get to stay in a state of victimhood, we get to maintain this illusion that we're blameless. And therefore, we don't have to look at our own part. We don't have to change our behavior, and we don't have to take accountability. So that is it. Blank page for episode 8. So I have some homework for you. So I want you to think about one resentment that you are struggling with right now, and take a look at it. Write down the name. Write down why you have this resentment, and write down what it affects in you. And then if you feel brave enough, I want you to write down your part in it. What did you do in this interaction? How did you think? How did you behave? What did you say that plays a part in this resentment? On the next episode, we will get into fear. That is the next part. And also, I'm going to write out a grid, like an actual grid, a template you can use for when you want to take your inventory, for when you want to write it out. But for now, just think of just one resentment that you've got. Like I said, right? There's four. There's four. 4 columns. And again, I'll make an actual visual example. But the first column, it's the name, right? So who is it that I have this resentment against? The second is, why do I have this resentment? In other words, what did they do to me? The third is, what does this resentment affect in me? And then that fourth column is my part, right? What did I do? What actions, like what were the actions that I physically took? What did my behavior look like? How did I speak to this person? How did I think about this person? How did I treat them? Essentially, what is my part in this that feeds this resentment? So if you're brave enough and you want to take a crack at it, you might get some illumination. Anyway, that's all for today's episode. Follow me on Instagram at @it's_not supposed to be pretty. Facebook, Kyle John. My profile picture is me standing in the woods. I've got an orange t-shirt on, and I've got my hat on backwards, and I'm doing like the shaka bra. It was when I was in the woods in Kentucky last year. I took that picture. Kyle John is the Facebook name. YouTube, type in "It's Not Supposed to Be Pretty." Find me on Spotify. It's Not Supposed to Be Pretty. I'm on TikTok as well. And then when you see the image, it's a skull, and he's got his face covering his eyes, and underneath it says "It's Not Supposed to Be Pretty." So give me a follow on my platforms, and stay tuned for episode 8. I love you all so much. Thank you.